The wheelchair moved on its own. No vibration in the floor, no draft I could feel. The thing just rolled, slow and deliberate, down the center of that hallway while my EMF reader screamed into the red, and none of us said a word because none of us had breath left to say anything with. My name is Zach, and my crew and I had been documenting abandoned places for 3 years before we walked into Pennhurst. We'd been inside factories, schools, a shuttered naval base outside Norristown. We thought we understood the scale of derelict America. We didn't. Nothing prepared us for a building that had once held 1,500 human beings, most of them against their will, all of them forgotten. The perimeter was the first obstacle. Active construction crews had claimed the outer grounds during daylight hours, hard hats, heavy equipment, the whole operation, which meant we couldn't approach the main building until the last truck rolled out after sundown. While we waited, we set up base camp near the old church at the property's edge. It wasn't until morning that we noticed what we'd pitched our gear on top of. The ground there was uneven in a particular way. Irregular mounds, spaced like furniture, under a sheet. We'd spent the night sleeping on graves. That detail should have told us something about how the rest of the night would go. We breached the main building around 11. The front doors had been chained, so we went through a ground floor window on the east face, one by one, dropping into a corridor that smelled like wet plaster and something older underneath it. Something organic and closed in. And wrong. My flashlight beam caught the wheelchair from about 40 feet. It was sitting in the middle of the hall, facing away from us. Then, it wasn't facing away from us. The EMF reader in Marcus's hand went from baseline 0 to a sustained red line shriek in under 2 seconds. We'd gotten false positives before. Old wiring, corroded pipes. But this reading didn't spike and drop. It held. Constant. Like the instrument was measuring something that had decided to stay. Then, the voice came. A woman. Somewhere above us, or below us, or in the walls. The acoustics in that building were a maze, sound bouncing through collapsed ceilings and open ductwork. But the voice was close. A single phrase repeated twice. I won't write what it said here. My crew heard it differently from each other, and I've spent 2 years trying to decide if that makes it worse. We moved fast after that. Too fast. The corridor was a disaster of fallen plaster and stripped cable runs, and in the scramble back toward the window, I caught my boot on a wire stretched across the floor, went down hard, palms skidding across debris, camera clattering. The footage from that section is unwatchable. Just ceiling, blur, shouting. We made it out. But here is the thing I keep returning to, the wheelchair. When we reviewed the footage afterward, frame by frame, you can see it moving. You can see that the hallway behind it is completely empty. And you can see that when it stops, it has turned to face the camera. The graves we slept on had no markers. The construction crew, when we asked, said they didn't know anything about a church cemetery, said the ground there was just uneven from old drainage work. The footage has 300,000 views. I've watched it maybe 1,000 times. I still can't explain what moved the chair. What Zach's crew experienced was loud, chaotic, visible. What happened to Jake and Tyler was quieter and far more deliberate. The footsteps weren't echoes. I know that now. Echoes don't accelerate. I'm Jake. Tyler and I had been doing urban exploration together since college, not for clout, just for the quiet of it, the particular stillness of places that industry had abandoned. The old municipal water treatment facility outside Gary, Indiana, had been offline since 1992. 3 acres of corroded filtration tanks, sedimentation basins, rusted catwalks, and a network of underground pump corridors that the city had officially sealed and unofficially forgotten. We'd been watching it for months before we went in. We entered through a service gate on the south fence line around 9:30 on a Wednesday in late October. The temperature had dropped into the upper 30s, and the sky was that flat, pressureless black you only get in industrial zones, where ambient light doesn't accumulate. No moon worth mentioning. Tyler had the primary light. I had the camera and a backup torch clipped to my jacket. The whispers started in the second pump corridor. Not words, just the shape of speech. Rhythmic, rising and falling in patterns that felt intentional, the way white noise starts forming sentences, if you listen long enough. Tyler stopped walking and grabbed my arm. We stood there for a solid 30 seconds in the dark, just listening. He said later he thought it was ventilation bleed from a neighboring facility. I wanted to believe that. The hollow bangs that started a few minutes later were harder to explain. Deep, resonant, traveling through the metal superstructure of the building, like the place had a pulse. We kept moving because stopping felt worse. The footsteps began on the catwalk above us. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. The cadence of someone taking careful, measured steps across perforated steel. Tyler aimed his light up, and we saw nothing. Open grating, a tangle of old pipe, darkness above that. But the sound continued. And here is what I need you to understand. It moved with us. When we walked, it walked. When we stopped, there was a delay. 1 beat, 2 beats, and then it stopped too. Then the glass bottle shattered, directly behind us. Neither of us had been near glass. There was no glass near our entry path. The sound was sharp and proximate and impossible, and before the last fragment had finished skipping across the concrete, Tyler was already moving and I was right behind him, not running yet, both of us making the decision that rational people make when the evidence stops being ambiguous. Then the flashlight beam swept the far corridor. Not our beams. A third beam. Angled toward us, searching in slow arcs, the way you search when you know something is there and you're taking your time finding it. We ran. The exit we'd marked on entry was 140 meters through 2 corridors and up a half flight of stairs. I know because we'd paced it when we arrived, the way you do when you want to know your options. We made it in what felt like 15 seconds. I don't remember my feet touching the ground. We never found out who or what was in that plant with us. The city told us the facility was sealed and secured. The fence showed no signs of other entry when we checked it the following morning in daylight. But somebody swept that corridor with a light. Somebody took 3 measured steps on that catwalk and waited when we waited, and started again when we started again. And the glass bottle, which I've thought about more than anything else from that night, was lying in the center of the corridor floor, already broken when we'd passed through 20 minutes before. Neither of us had seen it. Which means either we walked right past it without noticing, or it wasn't there the first time. I don't know which possibility disturbs me more. Tyler and Jake ran from something that hunted them through corridors. Dave never had to leave his house. The thing found him first. I heard my name in my own house. Not a shout, not a sound you'd mistake for settling wood or street noise. A voice, a child's voice, saying my name with the particular patience of something that had been waiting a long time to say it. My name is Dave. I live alone in a 2-bedroom rental in Akron, Ohio. I had the camera rolling that night because I'd been doing a casual walkthrough of the place. Nothing serious, just testing audio equipment I'd bought secondhand. I was in my bedroom when the sound came from down the hall. I pointed the camera toward the door. The hallway was dark except for the ambient glow from the bathroom nightlight, and at first I saw nothing. Then I saw her. She was in the corner where the hall meets the wall beside the linen closet. Small, young, maybe 6 or 7, though I couldn't be certain in that light, facing the corner. Her shoulders were shaking, the way a child's shoulders shake when they're trying to contain crying that has already become uncontrollable. I lowered the camera. I don't know why I did that. Instinct, maybe. The kind of instinct that recognizes something the conscious mind hasn't processed yet and tries to protect you from the moment before understanding arrives. I looked at her with my own eyes, unmediated, for what felt like several seconds. Then I raised the camera again. She had turned around. She was looking directly into the lens, not at me, at the lens. The distinction felt important in a way I couldn't articulate then, and still can't fully explain. Her face was dry. Whatever crying had been happening had stopped completely. Her expression was not frightened or confused or any of the things a child's face does when a child is lost or afraid. The recording ends there. I have no memory of stopping it. I have no memory of the next several hours. I woke up in my bedroom the following morning with the camera on the floor beside the bed, battery dead, and the linen closet door standing open, which I know was closed when I walked through the hall because I checked that closet specifically. There's a broken catch on the door that means it swings open on its own, and I've developed the habit of double-checking it every time I pass. The footage, when I uploaded it, shows 43 seconds of the hallway after I lowered and raised the camera. During the first 37 seconds, the corner is empty. She appears in frame 6 seconds before the recording stops. There are no children in my building. I have no family in Akron. My landlord, when I described what I'd seen, told me the previous tenant had a daughter who'd had what he called a difficult time in the house. He didn't elaborate. He changed the subject so fast it felt rehearsed. I moved out 3 months later. The voice follows me here too. Different house, different city, same patients. Same particular way it says my name, like it's reminding me of something I already know, but keep forgetting. I keep the camera close. Dave's fear lived in what turned around. Alex and Brody discovered that sometimes the threat outside is nothing compared to what's already in the room with you. We've been in this building before. That's the part that still gets me. We knew its layout. We thought we knew its temperament. My name is Alex. Brody and I run a small urban exploration channel. Nothing massive, just the two of us, handheld cameras, honest documentation of abandoned architecture. The care home had been our most viewed upload until the footage from our first visit corrupted entirely. 2 hours of material, completely unrecoverable. The facility manager we'd consulted for historical records said that happens sometimes with old buildings. Electromagnetic interference from aging electrical infrastructure. He said it with the practiced confidence of someone who'd explained something he didn't actually believe. We went back. The ground-level entry points we'd used the first time had been boarded since our visit, which meant the roof. We climbed an external drainage pipe on the north face and came in through a maintenance hatch that had rusted open, dropping about 8 feet into a corridor on the second floor, landing in 6 years of accumulated dust that rose around us like breath. The children's wing was down a connecting passage, past what had once been a common room and a row of single-occupancy sleep rooms, their doors still carrying name cards in plastic holders, faded, unreadable. We set up in the main room of the wing around 10 p.m. and started the equipment rolling. 20 minutes in, the flashlights appeared outside, methodical sweeping. Somebody walking the perimeter with purpose. The pattern of movement of someone who checks the same circuit on a rotation. Security. Possibly police. We killed our own lights and pressed against the interior wall beside the window, controlling our breathing, running the math on trespassing charges and equipment confiscation. That's when the cart hit the floor, not fell, not tipped. Hit. A single violent impact, metal on concrete, loud enough to feel it in the sternum, and it came from inside the room with us. Brody had his arm in front of me before I'd processed what I'd heard. We both swung our lights toward the sound. A heavy metal utility cart, the kind that used to carry institutional supplies through the wing's corridors, was on its side, 3 feet from where we were standing. There was no surface it could have rolled from. Nothing. It could have struck to end up horizontal. The nearest wall was 8 feet away, and the floor was level. The security lights were still outside. We could see them through the window, still running their circuit, unhurried. Brody made the call. He made it before I finished the thought, which told me we were thinking the same thing. The people outside were a misdemeanor. Whatever was in this room with us was something we had no category for. We went up the way we'd come down. Drainage pipe, roof hatch, the cold open air of the parking lot, and then the car, doors locked, engine running, before either of us spoke. We reviewed the footage later. The cart appears in frame for the full 20 minutes before it moves. It is upright, positioned against the south wall. exactly where abandoned carts sit when a building has been empty for 6 years. Then, on frame, with both of us clearly visible across the room and clearly not near it, it moves. Not tips, not slides, rises slightly on one side as if lifted and then drops. The footage from this visit did not corrupt. I've thought about that too. Why the first visit's footage vanished and this one survived. What the difference was. Whether something wanted this particular recording to exist. I don't have a comfortable answer. Alex and Brody fled upward. Carter and Sam had nowhere to go but deeper, down into a basement that had already decided to keep them. The door slammed shut, and there was no wind. I want to be precise about this, because precision is the only thing I have left. We were in the sub-basement of the Byberry State Hospital complex. The lower level, the one that doesn't appear on the building's official floor plans, the one that water had worked on for decades until the concrete walls had begun to breathe moisture, like skin. Carter and I had descended through 2 levels of the main structure to reach it. No windows, 1 staircase behind us. The air was the temperature and texture of a closed mouth. My name is Sam. Carter runs the camera. I handle navigation and documentation. The door that slammed was the internal access door at the base of the stairwell. A heavy fire door, steel frame, the kind installed in institutional buildings in the 1960s when architects still believed that certain things needed to be contained. There was no airflow in the sub-basement. We had verified this on entry, the way you verify these things when you've been doing this long enough. A lighter held up, the flame standing perfectly vertical and still. No draft. No convection. Nothing. The door slammed hard enough to knock a sheet of rust from its upper hinge. We heard the rust hit the floor. Carter's camera tracked to the door. I watched his face instead. That's how I knew the sound was real. I've learned to gauge these moments by what they do to Carter, who was filmed in places that would have broken most people, and what it did to Carter was take the color out of his face in a single second. We did not go to the door. Understand that. We stood in the center of the sub-basement, and we processed what had happened, and we made the decision, silently, to continue. Because the footage from this location was the entire reason we'd made the trip from Philadelphia. Because we'd already committed 3 hours of driving and 2 hours of navigation through the structure above us to get here. Because when you're standing in a place that has already done something impossible, the logical part of your brain constructs a scaffold of rationalization so fast you can watch it happen and still not stop it. The baby crying started 11 minutes later. Close. Not from the walls, not from the floor above us. Close, the way sound is close when its source is in the same room. A newborn's cry. The specific tonal register of an infant in distress, repeating in irregular intervals that felt less like mechanical repetition and more like the irregular rhythm of an actual child. Neither of us spoke. Carter held the camera perfectly level, which I know from experience takes enormous deliberate effort, and I watched the dark at the far end of the sub-basement and understood, in a way that bypassed language entirely, that whatever had made that sound knew exactly where we were standing. It had been tracking us since the door. We had come down 1 staircase. It was still the only way out. The door at the base of it had slammed shut, and neither of us had opened it since. Carter reached out and found my arm in the dark without looking away from the camera. That's when I moved. That's when we both moved toward the stairwell. Not running because the floor was uneven and water damaged, and running in the dark on a surface like that means falling, and falling in the Byberry sub-basement meant staying there. We climbed. The cry followed us up the first flight. Then it stopped. We didn't stop until we reached street level. The recording captured all of it. The door. The rust hitting the floor. Carter's breathing changing. And the cry. Clear, close, unmistakable. Recorded on audio equipment, sensitive enough to detect a whisper at 20 feet. We've had the audio analyzed. 3 separate people, independently, confirmed. Infant vocalization, consistent with a child between 2 and 6 weeks old. No mechanical or digital source identified. Byberry closed in 1990. Its last patients were transferred out over the course of several months. The sub-basement, according to the records we were able to access, was used for storage. The records don't specify what was stored there. I think about that staircase, about the fact that the sound stopped when we hit the second flight and not before, like something had followed us to the edge of its territory and turned back, or like it had already gotten what it wanted. We have not returned. Carter has not returned to any abandoned structure since that night. I still don't know what was in that basement with us, but I know this: it wasn't afraid of us. It wasn't hiding from us. It let us hear it because it chose to. And whatever it was choosing, I don't think it was finished choosing when we left. The archive closes here. Subscribe, send your story, and watch what's waiting on screen, because what came out of these places didn't stay behind.